Um, Hi all. So today we have session on IO tools on which are used for performance testing. Let's wait for a few more guys to join. So please hold on.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Ravi.
Uh, Hi Ravi, your voice is a little bit low. So can you come closer to microphone, please?
Is it audible now?
Yes, this is better.
Cool. Okay, I think it's time. Let's start. I'll share my screen. Okay, one second. Okay. So, Harshad, shall we start now?
Yes, we can start.
Okay. Uh, 1 minute. Okay, you can see the slides.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can.
Cool.
Yes, yes.
Cool. So, yeah, so I'll start. So, this is another webinar in continuation of the A4 Technology System community program. Uh, here are the few things which uh, viewers can refer, like why should we attend this webinar, who can be part of this community, what can you expect from this webinar. So I'll quickly jump to the agenda for today's discussion. uh, we'll be having a Q&A round, so feel free to have questions. Let's park them at the end of the session. And there's also an option that if you want, we have an email ID mentioned there, so you can send over your queries at any time. We'll be happy to help. Okay, so for agenda is what is IO traffic? So I'll be discussing what is an IO and why we are saying as IO traffic, why it is important for storage testing, why we need it to be there while we are validating for various products. What are the ways to generate the IO? How we can reproduce them, how we can tailor them for future use. Next will be like what IO tools are available which can be utilized, which one is good. We'll see the pros and cons and which we can use. And next we'll be having a quick hands-on of few of the tools. I'll just show them how you can execute them, what are the various parameters you can utilize and further references. Okay. Okay, let's start. So first point is that what is IO traffic? So uh, IO is simply the input and output. Now consider an environment where we have, so we are discussing about storage testing. So we assume that we have a storage component and we have multiple clients. Now what happens is that to utilize the storage, majorly what we do is that we do various file operation on the client side, right? So that's more like doing the input and output from the clients, and that's what create the traffic which is coming from the clients and accessing various processes in between, transferring the packets over the network and getting the operation done. So IO traffic is the same input output process for data going between storage media and other clients. To have file operation, there are various ways and there are various operation as well. So like I have mentioned few of them which are majorly coming from the OS level protocol specific. So like create, delete, open, close, read, write, uh, append. You want to set some attribute for a particular file, for a particular directory. You want to fetch the attribute, rename, linking, and there are a bunch of them. So IO traffic basically consists of these type of various file operations. So what multiple clients do is that they perform file operation over storage. Like few of the clients are doing read at the same time. Few of the clients are doing write and other operation, vice versa. So in simple term, multiple clients doing various operation back and forth to storage, which is termed as IO traffic in storage testing. Okay, it's simply doing file operation from various clients. That's it. That's the IO traffic it is. Okay, why we need IO generation for storage testing? Okay, so if we take an example that we have to validate a particular storage software or product, and what we have to ensure that it works as a customer requirement or whatever the initial requirements are, but it needs to be it needs to be validated first for the basic operation, whatever we had discussed earlier. So basic operation is the file operation. So if we validate a product and we are validating any particular feature of it, we have to ensure that we are having IO traffic in progress so that uh, we can ensure that the product is going to be behave in an appropriate manner while various clients will be doing various file operation. So that's the same thing, like storage is all about IO. So most of the use cases should be performed and validated if the system is under load. So try to this is another thing. Try to simulate the customer environment. There's another aspect where we require IO generation, because think like in customer environment or in say like in data center environment, there will be thousands of clients, thousands of users will be doing file operation at a time. So validating a particular product or a feature standalone without having an IO is not a true testing. Okay, so okay, with respect to system test or stability test, product should be able to perform IO operation without any disruption. When I say disruption is something that your IO or whatever the operation is coming in to be performed on storage side, that is not stopped or hampered anyhow. Let's take an example, like if I have multi-node cluster, multi-node storage cluster, and which is managing lot of metadata, then managing lot of data protection technologies, like having copies and other stuff. It has compression, dedupe, and whatnot. Now, having all these features and all these operations going on, if a client has been requested to particular to write a particular file, and that can be of various block size, and it is trying to write, in any means the file write should not be stopped. Okay, so we have to consider that whenever we are running system test and trying to validate the whole product as a whole system, or doing any stability tests, we should be having heavy workload going on in parallel, and then we can validate various features. Okay. uh,
Excuse me, Ravi. Sorry to disturb you.
yeah,
Uh,
sure.
I can see means a lot of UI from your screen. So can you check the sharing setting because
uh, you,
means we can see the browser tab and other UI items. So
okay, just a second, I'm sorry about it if that happened.
yeah, now it's okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, perfect, I'm sorry about it. Okay, so okay, we were here. Now, the next topic is that what are the ways to generate the IO and how we can make it reproducible. So before starting a discussion over this, first I'll give an example that why this is important. Say like I was testing some product, and I was doing some kind of file operation. So like I was writing a file of block size of say like 4 and I was creating 10 of the files, and meanwhile I was just another client was reading a file or particular file. So this is a kind of workload or IO. Now, having this workload or IO in progress, somehow I rebooted some cluster node. Now, after that, I found a bug. Now, I filed a bug. Now, the developer is saying that he wants this to be reproduced. Now, if we have generated this whole IO manually, it is really tough to understand and ensure that, okay, at this particular stage, when I'm doing this particular thing, I know that the product is going to fail. So it's if you are generating file ops manually, that can be done easily though, but it can be handy for a smaller workload. But if we are expanding the testing, and we have a great enterprise storage, like which will be used by like thousands of users and thousands of clients at a time, we have billions of files available on a particular storage box, then we have to understand that if we are generating some IO, we have to ensure that it is tailored and it can be easily reproduced. Okay, so that's the one aspect that why we require that, and how we should generate the IO, and how we should make them reproducible, and that's why we use the IO tools. So hence we use multiple IO tools which are available as an open source and paid, and to have exact IO to be reproduced. I'll go in depth that for each and every like I have 2 3 examples of IO tools, but here I would like to mention is that the most of the IOs, those can be executed via command line, as you know, and those can be invoked via config file as well. So what happens is that whenever you are doing any test and you're starting the IO, you already have decided, or the pre-environment set that this particular test case requires this type of workload, and you pre-tailored that config file and then you execute it. So having said that, you already have that workload in place. So in case of any kind of reproduction, you can quickly just rerun that config file. That's it. Okay. Now, what are the IO tools available? That's the obvious question. Okay, we talked about like, okay, we have to use IO tools, but what are the IO tools which are available which we can use? Now, as I mentioned that there are various IO generation tool available, open source and paid as well. So it depends upon the use cases. Why I'm saying that? Because use case can be different, because workload can be of different type. Now, take an example, like I am testing a NAS box, then I'm thinking in a way that I'll be having a test case, or I should be having a IO tool which generates file operation, right? File operation, like it creates multiple files, it creates various size of files, it creates like different type of files in Linux, like we have like links, we have directories, we have name pipe, socket, and whatnot. There are a bunch of other types as well. So I'm thinking in a way that since I'm testing NAS, I should be having IO tool which does these file level conformance. Okay, so that's the one use case. Another use case is that, say, like I want to deploy a particular database. Okay, so now my IO tool should be an option where it can create a synthetic database workload. So accordingly, I'll be selecting the IO tool. Now another aspect will be is that uh, need is there, of course, but there is a cost associated with it. So mostly people are going with the open source tools because those are most widely used and those are stable enough. So it depends what tool you want to use, but there are a bunch of tools available which are paid as well as which are open source. Every tool is having its own pros and cons and special use case, as I mentioned, like few of the file benchmarking, like protocol conformance, like we have like uh, connectathon, NFS test to do the conformance for NFS. For performance on system side, we have like FIO, VD bench, FSX Linux, DD. There are sparse file. Basically, DD creates a sparse file, but not the actual files. So there can be many tools. So here's the link I have mentioned here for the reference. It says a lot of testing tools which you can refer for the NFS testing point of view. Uh, all the tools are not suitable because these tools are designed for specific purposes, but you can walk through with them and see which is usable. But most commonly, what tools you can use is like FIO, DDBench, IOZone, IOmeter, DD, FSX Linux, FileBench, SysBench, and there are others. Okay. Now, which one is good and should be used? As I said, this depends upon the use case which you want to use. There are a few things which you need to ensure because every tool is having various options available depending upon the characteristics they have. So, like you can see what tool is having, like what file operation it is supporting, number of files, how much maximum number of files or minimum number of files it can support, file sizes, max file sizes, with what tool can support, what are the block sizes. So I'll dig down the block size, but high level you can just send every file has been written, or every IO is depending upon the block size, and similar to the block size, the IO has been passed to the file system, and then file system decides that okay, my storage disk is written on this particular block size and the coming block size of this type, and it manages and writes the file. Okay, The block size is very, very important for any kind of file operations. Yeah. Number of jobs and threads, those are also important. When I say number of jobs and threads, that means every process. Uh, so every in Linux or Windows in operating system, what happens is that every process is having its own memory space. Now, every process has been started with a single thread, which is a kind of parent thread, but it depends upon behavior of the process. It can generate multiple threads as well to make the things in parallel. So what happens is that few of the tools has this liberty to start multiple jobs at the same time, and they can have multiple threads as well within a single process, which makes like, okay, I'm just running only single workload, but I had like 32 threads, and I had like, okay, I have like four num jobs. So each job is having 32 threads. In this way, if we are writing a file, every thread is separately writing a file, and that makes the system IO performance really improved because we have parallel IOs going on. So that's one. Another thing is that we need to ensure, and that is very, very important, is that having a tree structure or the we say width or depth structure in the IO tool, whether it supports or not. When I say depth and width, that means on a particular directory, how much files, level of files you can create. Like you're saying the depth is 2 and the width is 3. And accordingly, for each level, we'll be creating two directory, and inside that directory, we'll be creating 3 files. Okay. That's how the actual implementation of a file server has, right? People doesn't create all the folders at same level. Yeah. So another aspect is, which is very, very important, is the data validation, because we are dealing with the files and doing read and write. So we need to ensure that tool is having data validation. There are other features as well depending upon tool, like we have compression, we have dedupe. There are other tools like they have caching, local caching, or they directly write the files or the IO of the storage. So that's a high level key pointers which you should evaluate before using an IO tool. Once you're handy and we already evaluated particular tool, you're good to go. You know that, okay, these are the tool which is handy to be used and uh, well behaving, then it's okay. You can go ahead and use it. Okay. I'll
Okay,
just take
Ravi,
I'll
I
take
have,
a pause. Yeah, if yeah, Harshan.
yeah. So, in validation, what exactly we check?
Right.
Do we
Right.
check MD5 sum, or are there any other methods to
Right.
validate?
Yeah, so the data validation point I mentioned here is that it will be checked whether what type of validation a tool supports. Let's take an example of VD Bench. It support MD5. It support SHA 120, right? So there are a lot of algorithms which used to calculate and verify whether the data is correct or not before the write and after the write. So that depend upon the tool which algorithm it supports. But for
Okay.
VDBench, I know that it support SHA, it support MD5 sum and whatnot. It's very highly recommended tool.
Okay. Okay. And
Mhm.
are there any tools which takes permissions also? Means should that be a
So
point to validate the data?
permission is basically a functional aspect. So if you want to see the validation for a particular file, whether the permission is getting changed or not, you can use like Connectathon, right? So Connectathon has various tests, already pre-tailored test cases. So what it does is that it does all the file operation. It changes them, it changes the attributes of them, and see whether the expected behavior or not. So another example will be, if you wanted to check the permissions, will be NFS test. There is another tool, FSX Linux, yes, which is a part of basically Linux test project, but the that tool you can use individually as well. So that also does the Linux file system exercise and or perform all these operations as well as functional aspect as well as the performance aspect both.
Okay.
Does that answer? Okay,
Yes, yes.
cool. Okay, so I wanted to have few questions if anyone is having at this point, then I'll move into the demo part.
And the deduplication means most of these tools must be generating deduplicated data, right? Because that is very important.
Right, and you can set the percentage or the level of dedupe as well. Like if you don't want to do 100% dedupe, you can mention the ratio like okay 60% dedupe.
Okay.
And once the dedupe happening, so once you are having these type of flags, what it is doing, it is validating in two ways. First point is whether the dedupe happened perfectly or not. It can have uh, consequences when your product itself is applying a lot of dedupes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so because you have to consider that level as well, because once you write down and your write is not inline. Inline means like it is not immediately writing it, right? It is just simply saying, okay, I just in case of NetApp, right? What it does is that it takes up the write and simply say without writing on the disk, simply say that yeah, that the file has been written. You go ahead and enjoy. But on the back end, what it does is that after that, having the data in NVRAM, it pauses and it does the dedupe, it does the compression, and then it find out, okay, this particular disk, I need to write it down. This is the file pointer, I'll open it. After this file handle and block I need to write, I'll write it. Meanwhile, client already knows that, oh, my data has been written. So that we need to consider.
Hmm.
But so like if you're not highly working with dedupes, you can use those flags because it creates another hook on your testing and makes the system confused. Okay,
Okay. Great.
cool. Okay, then I have a few of the things here. After that, I'll go and directly run them. So there are a few tools I would like to discuss. First is like DD, which is Linux in-house tool, which is available freely. What I request everyone to see the man pages which are available for these various tools. I have added them in the reference as well. I'll show them how you can execute. I'll show them what are the values and what are the parameters and what it is mean. But there are various further options and various flags which you can use because exercising everything is give me a minute guys, give me a minute. Okay, I'm sorry about it. So this is side effect of pandemic. So you can have other other background music. So I'm sorry about it. So what I was saying is that I'll show you what are the flags, what are the values which you can use. But I do suggest that go through with the man pages and understand so that you can use your flag which are required for you. Okay. So first go with the DD. Simple. It is very simple. You can use basically it's used to copy the data and dump the data. Majorly, it is creating a sparse file. When I say sparse file, if you're not aware, it's something that which has the null inside a file. So it's not an actual text file, which has like from first block to the end of the file size, it has all the data written. It is not like that. So what it does is that whenever you create a sparse file, it simply create a file and allocates the space to that file, although we don't have any data inside that. Okay, so it's an example here, just simply dd. We are saying if, which is an input file, and we are utilizing the slash dev 0, which is nothing but a null. And we're saying off, which is output file, and we are giving our file name. As I said, block size. The block size I'm giving is a 4K, and count is 8. Now count is something that how many how many blocks you want in a particular IO. So I said that count 8 and the block size is 4K. That means one IO will be having like 32K block. Okay. So if I'm copying it from dev 0 to output, one IO will be having 32K. Okay. I'll show you what the size is if we are using this particular thing, what type of or what file size it will be creating. Okay. So that's one. Second, as I highly recommend, is that VDBench. It has been widely used and most used open source tool from Oracle. It can be downloaded freely and it can be used cross-platform as well, like on Linux and as well as on Windows, as well as on the Windows. Okay, so I'll show you the execution part, how I create a test file. That also I'll show. The third tool I'll be today discussing is the FIO. It has this man page and it is also very well known for performance testing for file operation and creating the IO generation. It also supports the config command line and config file execution. Okay. So having said that, I'll go here. You can see my screen. Hello.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, let's take an example. Okay, first I'll go with the DD. So what I'm going to do, as I showed you that DD works. So this is input file and this is output file, and I'm using the block size is 1M and I'm using count 2. So what I'm going to do is that I'll create, so whenever you executing a DD, you need to ensure whether you are specifying the full path, the absolute path. Otherwise it is taking the current path. So if I run this, okay, so it has created an out file which is of 2 MB. How? Because I said that whenever we are defining count says that what is the block size we are going to create, what is the IO size we are going to create. So we said that create one two 1M IO, which is like 2M. So it created a particular IO which is of write or copy, and it created a dump that IO in a out file. So out file size is total 2M. Okay. If you go and check man DD, there are various ways you can see. As I'll just walk through with few of them. See here you have the counts. You can define the bytes. You can the file name. You can have seek. Seek is another example when we want to create a sparse file. Okay, so let's create sparse file. Okay, I don't have it now. I'll run the same, but I'll say seek equal to like 10. Okay. Okay. So now if you see here that it is saying that I created a file which has like 12 MB of space. Although if you see the use space which it is taking, that file is taking on the file system is only 2 MB. Because what we have done is that we said that you create this IO, but start writing after 10th block. So what it does is that it fills up from the start. It will 10th. It will fill up the blank or null, not the blank. I should say null, and that's how the sparse file has been created. Okay. Okay. Move to next tool, which is FIO. Okay, so as I said, FIO can be executed in two ways. Either you can run it via CLI, or you can create a file, config file. So I'll just quickly run with those. First, let's run this and understand what it is. The parameter is all about. The simple name is straightforward. RW is simply what kind of operation you have to perform. So this can be write, this can be read, this can be read write, this can be random read write. When I say write, that is a sequential write. Sequential write is always going one block like that. And random is randomly selecting some block and after that it starts writing. So sequential write, sequential read, read write, sequential read write, random read, random write, random read write. Okay. So that's those options you can mention here. Now direct, why we is using direct? So once we are saying direct, FIO is having a flexibility where you can say that I don't want to use client caching, because what happens is that whenever on the Linux side or the operating system side, every client is having its own cache, and whenever any IO has been getting performed, it's going in the cache and then getting the transfer. If it is a network, then it will transfer the IO to the network, or it is a local disk, then it will flush to the disk. So if you define that direct equal to 1, that means I'm not going to use the caching, client caching, and I'm directly going to write these file on my storage device. So let's take an example. This temp is my mount point, or I have some share and I mounted on this particular client, and that is mounted in temp. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to write this file directly on this share. I'm not going to have client caching. Okay. IO engine is something that you have to define, and there are default values for Linux like lib.io, which is predefined. Directory is where you want to write. Block size same as we discussed in DD. Now here's the file size where you want to mention the file size. Let's run it. So it gives a pretty decent output, and there are various information already available. You can see what are the IOPS came in for write. This is write IOPS. Now, if you have written here read write, like you wanted to read again and write again, then it will have shown that what are the IOPS for read, what is the bandwidth, and in millisecond, and the other various uh, performance values. Okay. Now let's see. So here's the file which has been created. So most of the tools have their own way to create the files if you're not specifying the file name. So it created a 4 MB file, and like we have said that file size we require 4 MB. So here you can experiment, like you can try multiple block sizes, you can try various file sizes. I think in a way that one particular storage is not going to have all IO in the same block size. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that you try it out, because one client might be having 1 MB as a block size, but might be another client is having 4K or 512 MB or any other thing. Okay, so I suggest to go ahead and try to.
I think, Ravi, this has to do with the file system, right? Means
Yeah,
various file systems has
right,
different block size, right?
right.
Yeah.
So even in case of using NAS or using SAN, even if you're using SAN, what you do is that you you get the LUN on the host, right? You create the partition, you create a file system over there and start doing the file creation, right? So in case of even you have to validate the SAN, you can utilize all these tools. Okay, so it's not specific for NAS. Does that answer, Harshit?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, no, it's a bit confusing. So,
Sure.
Miss, haven't worked on SAN recently. So, in SAN we have learns, right? So we uh, means how we use those learns and
So that's basically a different topic, but if you want to use a LUN, what you do, let's take an example. You have a NetApp box, right? You created a LUN. Okay,
yeah.
first you create a volume on a particular aggregate, and you create a LUN on that aggregate. Now you create an I group which will be, mapped to a particular LUN. Once that mapping is done and you have the networking path cleared for a particular Linux client, okay, take a Linux client, then what you'll do is that if you check on the disk level, if disk level, then you have that LUN visible on that particular host, correct?
Hmm.
Now what to have a file operation or any kind of how you're going to use that LUN, either you can use it as a block device or you can use it as a file system, right?
All right.
Now, say like I need to use it file system. What I'll do is that I create a partition on that LUN, format it. So like I'm using ext3. I'll partition it. I'll create a file system over it, and I'll mount it. So like I mounted in dev Ravi.
Okay, got it.
Now I know that this particular LUN is mounted on this host as dev Ravi. So what I'll do is that I'll try to create all the files under dev Ravi. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, I wanted to show that uh, how we can specify a config file. So what happens is that on the CLI front, if you're running a smaller workload, it is handy. You can go ahead and simply execute a command, but treat it like you have to create various file size and different type of files and different type of operation for different file size. Then what it is best to create a conf file, and inside that conf file you can create your own workload. So is a conf file, we have a global section where we define few of the parameters like name, read write direct, IO engine, those stuff which are common. And if I wanted to create a file which is of 4M, and let's take an example, I want to create another file which is 2M. Okay, let's create 2M. So what it'll be doing is that it'll be we'll be starting a file with a single file, and it will create a 4M file and 5M file as well. Okay. So to run that, simply fio-f and the file name. Okay. Now it has created one file which is of 4M, size 4M, and it has, since we have defined the name as well, so it is not taking by default name. I can say that is 4M and another file which is of 2M. So that's that's the way you can use FIO using config file. Now that's my favorite is that the VD bench. So VD bench again, it's always preferred to create a conf file, and I'll show you what are the parameters in the conf file. But it is a great tool for to be referred for various workloads. One second. Okay. So VD bench can be used for storage block devices, can be used with tape as well, can be used for file system as well. And, you go ahead with the user manual. I've mentioned the reference. It has n number of features. It's basically a Java based IO tool. So there are a few parameters I would like to describe here very quickly. Is that first is that create anchor is something that it is creating your anchor or the directory where you want to do perform some operation. If you have already created directory, you don't need to specify. Simply you can say create anchor equal to no, or by default it's no, so you don't need to mention. Now, for a single file system, you need to define three components. First component is the storage device, file storage device, which is called FSD. Let me do this so that it is visible more. Okay. So here are the three files. So what we need to do is that we have to understand this is file storage device. I'm saying that file storage device name is something like FSD100. Anchor is the same, the directory. I'm saying that create all the files under temp, depth and width. Now this is the same thing as I previously mentioned, that we need to take care of these key points, is that how many files on a particular depth we want to create. So like we want to create two level of the directories, and inside those directories we want to create two files. So in that scenario, what we'll be doing is that we'll saying depth 2 and width 2 and create 10 files. That's a file number. The file size, what are the
Uh,
files? Yeah,
okay, sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, what is width? Depth is like how many subdirectories, right?
Width is something on a particular directory, how much you can
Oh, okay.
horizontally scale.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Width is something, depth is something vertical, and width is something horizontal.
Ah,
Okay. Uh, then once you define the storage definition, then you have to define the workload definition, and the third will be the run definition. So for a particular workload, for one workload, you need to define three components: storage device, storage definition, workload definition, and run definition. Okay, I'll show you in case I need to run threads here. I should not say thread, two files, two workloads here. Okay, so for workload definition, we have to define that, okay, what is the workload definition name, what is the storage device that you're going to use, what is the extra size that is a block here, and how many threads we want for a particular process. Same goes for run device. That run device name is rd underscore 10, and then what the workload device definition will be using. And format, yes, is that it is used basically just to ensure that we are not overlapping, since we have multiple threads. So what happens is that if you increase a lot of threads, and if you're writing small files, thread just complete its process very fast. And then what happened is that I again try to open that the same file, and which can lead to a data corruption. That's why we say format yes, then every time it's a fresh device to be written, so that we don't have any uh, data errors. Okay, elapse is something that the time interval. Let's run it. Let's see how it shows. It has all the detailed output, and it shows what is the right packets and what is the right bandwidth, what is the read rate and everything. It has all these details. Okay, is there any question? Okay, so I'll show you the file it is. So what VDBench does is that it creates a control file where it manages that what is the read write have been happening. So it creates a control file, and inside, and another directory which it creates is that the like vdb.1.1. 1.1 is the same. The one is width and one is depth. And inside that you create 10 files. These are the files which we have created, and we said that we need size of 1024K. Okay, so I think it's more than enough for the starting. What I highly recommend, don't jump and start using the IO tools, just first go and read about the man pages. That will really help you out to understand what are the options which you can use. Okay, I have few assignments, and this assignment is basically in align with the same like running various tools, which I didn't mention as well. Like first you run FIO, then you understand the flags, block size, what are the operation you can do, what is sequential and random writes. Okay, VDBench also have an option where you can say that okay, you can give a percentage of read and write as well. Like okay, so for a single file you create 80% read and 20% write. So what it does is that it if we have to create 10 files, so what it will be doing is on that 8 file it is doing writes, and in 2 file it is doing a read, right? So go ahead and see those user manuals I have mentioned here, all the references, the testing tool mentioned as well. An assignment will be like simply run these, try to explore more on the block size side, file operation side, and data check side, data error side. So that is very, very important. So having said that, I'm done. If anyone has question, then I'm open.
So in read operation, it reads all the files from subdirectories as well, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
okay,
So if you have only read or as an operation, then what
okay,
it does is that first it'll create a file. So like you said that create one 10 MB file and do a read operation. What it does is that it'll create a 10 MB file first, and then will sequentially read one by one.
okay.
Okay. Uh, Feel free if you don't have any question right now, still you can mail us in at learning@a4tech.com. We'll be surely replying you back for this, and do tune for further videos and webinars. Okay.
Okay.
Harshad, I'm done.
Yeah. Thanks, Ravi. Thanks for a
Yeah.
wonderful session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye.